Welcome back to the Intrepid Hunter. I'm joined by Nathan Little, and this evening we're going to find out what he has been up to since we last spoke. Nathan, welcome.
Hi Meredith, how are you doing?
Really well, thank you. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Just dealing with a case of this early onset of hay fever. So forgive me if you can hear me sniffling a little bit. I seem to get it every year, and at the earliest possible stage, it seems to kick in. So it's if I sound a little bit groggy, that's what it is.
So you weren't out last night then?
No, do you know what? I've been really good. I haven't been out for a fair few weeks, and then I was in Mallorca last week, hunting, which we'll talk about in the next episode. And yeah, well, when in Rome, as they say. So, but other than that, I've been really well behaved.
So let's talk about your last trip. Were you well behaved on that?
No, this was just utter. It was just utter carnage, to be perfectly honest. In fact, yeah, both of the last trips to this same place were absolute carnage. So yeah, but the ultimate hunting trip, let's put it that way.
So talk me through it. Where did the carnage begin and how did it come about?
So this time, this one it sort of spans two trips, to be honest. So this was in eastern Germany. We were hunting Mouflon, and Dimitri, who seems to be my hunting brother now, we seem to hunt everywhere together, instigated this trip and arranged it for me to come and hunt Mouflon with him, our friend Jan, in the eastern part of Germany. And I'd never hunted Mouflon before. It was the first time for me. I love going to Germany because also I'm quarter German, so the German in me was sort of inspired. I couldn't say no. So Dimitri arranged this trip. First of all, we went in 21, which was just fantastic. And it was really quite an interesting trip because it was a sort of will we, won't we kind of last minute hunt because of the whole COVID situation with Germany still being quite strict, even though it had loosened off up here. The flight situation was I'll book the flight now. And I literally booked the flight 2 days before. I had all the paperwork and everything like that. So we'd done all the the gun paperwork and traveling with a gun, but actual are we going to make it was really last minute, and thankfully it was such a narrow window because I landed in Germany with literally a few hours remaining before new rules kicked in. So if I'd have landed a few hours later, I would have then had to quarantine or isolate for, I think it was 12 days or something like that in Germany. And I actually flew out on 18th of December. So I was due to fly back on the 23rd. So it was really touch and go. Scary, but makes for a good story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I guess with all of the concern about flying during COVID, how did you manage the transportation of your weapons and your equipment during that time as well? Because I guess you've got a lot to manage anyway when you've got that kit to get through security, but on top of COVID, how did you negotiate that?
That wasn't too much of a problem. The paperwork and the procedure for that was really straightforward. It was more the individual, the actual people traveling, which was more concerning, because of the passes at the time. We're talking sort of 14, 15 months ago now. So I'm just trying to remember that part. But yeah, that was the trickiest part, making sure that you've got all your paperwork, because obviously if you've not got that and your NHS scan thing, your thing on your app on your phone, making sure all that was up to date. And I actually became really quite meticulous with my paperwork at that point, and thankfully that's gone on because I used to be really quite chaotic with everything very last minute. Whereas now, when I'm traveling abroad, never with anything else, but once it's a hunting trip, I've become really meticulous, sort of to-do lists, checklists, lists of paperwork, traveling with multiple copies of everything. So there is positives with that, I suppose. So actually traveling with guns and kit and all that lot wasn't too bad, but it was more about the actual you as an individual, as a person crossing a border during that time. It was really quite strange. But once I'd got there and Dimitri had picked me up, it was happy days because we were again going to somewhere very, very remote in a literally a log cabin in the middle of nowhere, which was we drove literally through the night. I landed at 8 o'clock, and Dimitri picked me up from the airport hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we drove from Cologne Airport right the way across towards the Czech border, and got there, I think, early hours of the morning, ready to go, literally hit the ground running and go hunting straight away, sort of 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my goodness. And what was your heart set on this trip? If you'd had to come away with anything, what did you want it to be?
I wanted it to be that sort of proper cold weather hunt, see a few animals, not necessarily have to shoot something. That was a bonus if we find the right animal. We had a tag. I was very, very fortunate to be able to get a tag for a gold medal ram, which was fantastic. If we got him, then that was, absolutely fantastic. But it was more a case of I'd never seen Mouflon at this point before, and it was more about meeting new people, again spending time in quite a remote area, enjoying the food, the company, and hunting could gain broad from. So it was just more experience, and obviously there was very little, no real expectation, given that the short time frame in which it all happened. Because, as I say, it was very touch and go whether we was even going to get there at all. Just being there was fantastic.
Why do people hunt mouflon in that region?
It's a quarry species, as with all quarry species. There's an excitement level to them. They're a fantastic looking animal for people that want a trophy. They're a fantastic tasting animal. We ate a lot of mouflon and boar and things like that whilst we were there. And obviously, there's a management practice with them. And the particular area that we went to wasn't huge, but the quality of the animal there, that is directly as a result of the hunting and the fantastic management that the team, I can only describe as a syndicate of friends on the land that they manage. The efforts that they have put in clearly over the years have produced some absolutely incredible animals, and a really healthy herd of mouflon.
When you got there, obviously you've been traveling all night. Did you then go off and check zero straight away? What happened when you got there?
We'd zeroed before, I'd zeroed before, and even though it was traveling and whatnot, I was pretty confident with everything with the rifle. It breaks down quite easily, sets back up really quickly. So I was more than confident with that. But we went out quite early on. We just got straight to it. It was still pretty much pitch black, and it's quite an eerie feeling getting there in the middle of nowhere. I met my friend Jan, met the guide Jan, who now has become a very, very good friend, and we were communicating. My German is not what it used to be, and we were communicating very very primitively with what he wanted me to do. And we ended up going in a high seat to start with, on an area not far from where the cabin was. Quite a bit of snow on the ground, not huge amounts, but enough, so that helped you sort of navigate where you were going to the high seat. We'd sat there, and as I say, from about 5 o'clock in the morning till about 9 o'clock in the morning, it was Baltic cold. You're absolutely knackered, but you've gone straight in. You're just waiting there in silence because, one, A, you can't talk because you don't want to disturb anything, and B, I can't talk because at the time our language barrier was, and not also not knowing one another as well. It wasn't like we were mates beforehand. We only just met 20 minutes before. So it was all quite exciting and also a little bit weird at the same time. And the first morning, as I say, in the high seat, we saw animals, plenty of animals. Probably around 80 came out just underneath the high seat and started running, and I got it all on video. And it was just incredible to see the sheer number of them, and not only that, how easily they were able to sort of get in undetected from where we were. It was pretty awesome.
What kind of animals were they?
Sorry, the mouflon. My first ever sighting of mouflon, and as I say, it wasn't just one or two; it was about 80 of them. Yeah, they just like stealth. They came in behind us actually, and they must have just sort of caught our wind and bolted, and that was the last we saw of them. But it was just nice. It's one of those experiences as when you're out hunting, and whether you shoot something or not, it's always nice to see animals. It's not totally demoralizing when you haven't seen, as when you haven't seen anything, and it just shows that they are there.
It sounds like an amazing experience because I guess you go from the comfort of home to that region fairly quickly. and then you end up in a high seat with someone you've never met before, can't communicate with, but you're subject to these phenomenal sights.
Yeah, no, it was very, very cool. Literally, it was probably about -5 whilst we were there as well. But we were there for about 3 or 4 hours because it does become quite awkward when you do a talk, don't a talk. Well, no, I need to probably just shut up and listen and watch. Even though you want to sort of break that awkward silence, of not knowing this person. But it was really cool. We didn't take anything at that particular moment because even though Iran presented himself to us further out and still within perfectly acceptable range, he wasn't quite right. I'm kind of glad that I didn't on the first instance. I'm there for a couple of days. You want to make the most of the trip, but also you want to understand and appreciate what is the right animal to take. And by seeing animals that were too young or not particularly the standard that we're after, it's a learning curve as well. And it shows that hunters have restraint in what they're doing. They're not just pulling a trigger.
And were there any times over the trip when you kind of then looked back to that high seat moment and thought, "Oh, I wish I'd taken that one," or where you regretted waiting for what you were looking for?
No, because the perfect moment came, and I'm more of a firm believer now as these trips go on, whether it's mouflon, it's moose, it's ibex, it's boar, whatever it is. I'm a firm believer of the right animal will present itself at some point, and whether that's on that particular trip or it's on subsequent trips, it doesn't really matter. And there's a reason that you don't pull a trigger. I think there's a gut instinct with everybody. We all regret, oh, I could have done that. But I think there's a sort of a sixth sense for hunters why they didn't take certain shots. And as somebody once said to me, you hear more people regretting certain shots they've taken, not the ones that they didn't take, because it's there for another time. My time came, and that makes for such a better story anyway, which we'll get onto in a second.
You've mentioned before that it was really cold. Did you take the right kit for the climate?
No, absolutely. Again, I've got all my lacs and stuff, and the two brands in terms of clothing that I always stick with, and that I have for many years now is all my lacs and stuff, and my Brandycost boots. Both of them are super comfortable, and they're ideal for the varying circumstances that I've and predicaments that I've found myself in. Being sat there for hours on end. It's about good layers and proper layering system with the right kit and something that's not too heavy. And the Laxon smocks have been fantastic. But also my favourite of all of them is this Laxon fleece that they have. It's like a green fleece. And I've been in silly temperatures with that, and I just took that with me. But it's quite an interesting comparison because this first trip to Germany for Mouflon was prior to Kyrgyzstan, and then obviously I've been again last year, and we're talking about both trips, but the temperature in both instances has been noticeably colder, and the felt cold was so much worse in Germany because it was almost like it was like a damp cold as opposed to a dry cold. Really good gloves and thermals and things like that were far much more use here than
So how did that day end? Did you go on somewhere else after being in that high seat, or did you take a
well,
break?
well, that day ended with Dimitri and I very, very drunk in the cabin by about 11 o'clock in the morning. And I'm not ashamed to admit that it was fantastic. We weren't hunting, we were both exhausted. We'd been out and we thought, do you know what, bugger it, we're on holiday. We've managed to make this trip happen despite the circumstances with COVID and things like that. And yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with schnapps. Yeah, we started on the schnapps, then we went on to German beer, and everything was a cultural experience because everything was German that we that we drank. Yeah, we got really rather drunk, and I think we started because Dimitri's a chef as well, and a very good chef. I will credit him with that. We pretty much demolished the food that we had for 3 days, just as we're drinking, and I always pack cigars. So as we're drinking and smoking, we were like, oh, let's have some of this. And the food was just, oh, it was just heaven. I think we ended up having, Dimitri had previously shot some Sika, and he'd made this incredible cured ham, sort of, like this Serrano ham that they get, and they carve it really thin. Well, he made that from Seeker haunch, and it was just unbelievable. And we had that with some black truffle. It was so opulent. It really was for a lowly cabin in the woods. But it was just it was proper. So we spent the day settling in, unpacking, getting very drunk, singing songs which I've got on video, and just sort of really having a good time to say, well, we've got here, because that's part of what the hunt was. And then the team, the guys, the syndicate from the area came and joined us, and yeah, subsequently we got even more merry.
Did you find that your German progressively improved with the more schnapps you drank?
The more schnapps, I was fluent by the end of the night. I don't think they understood a word that I was saying, but I knew exactly what I was saying in German.
That's brilliant. So I'm guessing that the next day you may have gone out hunting with a hangover?
Uh, yeah, to say the least. But again, your excitement levels are there. You've seen animals from the day before. Feel a little bit ropey. Well, you get rid of that goes out the window. You forget all about that, and you're back in hunting mode. I was with Jan, who is sort of our main guide, who is just the most wonderful person. He's absolutely brilliant. He's a tattoo artist by trade, and I think he even later on tried to get me to have a tattoo, and I'm like, not a chance, not a chance. No matter how much snaps you pour down my throat, I'm not having a tattoo. But we he picked us up early in the morning, and he has this car. I think it's got a Lada. I think the Russian, and the most Soviet Union looking car ever. And I absolutely loved it. It was super comfortable, and it was so practical. And we really nippy, and we are just darting around these little country roads, looking at fields, looking at areas where Mouflon may be traveling through and from, and it was really exciting. There was a lot of sort of winter rape fields, that and open sort of arable fields that were looking over and trying to work out where to go next. So that was quite exciting. We spent quite a lot of the day doing that. Yeah, that was the second day, and they'd opened up to me. They knew Dimitri anyway, so it was all really friendly and exciting. And they were very generous, and they invited us to their home. We met Josie, his wife, who is equally as lovely. We just had such a nice experience there, having dinner, and everything we eat, we eat there. And I say eat there because this has become a regular trip. Is from the land that they've hunted. So it's different dishes of mouflon, some of the wild boar that they've taken, and it was amazing to see that whole circle of, again, a group of people that love and are passionate about hunting and eat it, and do the very reason, what it's for. It's not just trophies. That was the second day. So a lot of scouting around, looking and devising a plan.
If you're looking at all these fields, a field, a field, a field, what are they looking for when they're scouting?
Well, I think they're looking for where they typically see them on a sort of regular basis at certain times of day. I think they can be fairly predictable in certain instances, that that they're going to be around these certain areas, and also areas that we've hunted before, so that we're not repeating ourselves. So nothing's a guarantee with hunting. So it was a case of, this looks mouflon-y. Let's give this a whirl. And hopefully we'll bump into some. But there was a good population of animals there, so they were fairly confident that we'd find mouflon at certain points. And as I say, we'd already seen them in the morning, so we got an idea of which way they were going and how they were going to feed.
And going back to the food, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you ate all of your food for 3 days on that first drunken morning. So, I guess it makes sense that you call on the kindness of strangers. You mentioned the wild boar and the mouflon living off the land, as your hosts do. Were there any particular dishes or ways that they'd cooked that meat that has stayed with you, or you've thought, I need to learn, I need that recipe, I want to replicate that?
In quite German tradition, there was a lot of salamis and a lot of sort of sausages and things like that there, which were fantastic. The mouflon was really nice, and the boar, it's like a given that it's going to be nice. The interesting thing that we had with the mouflon, and this was actually second time round, was it was like a rack of mouflon ribs, and they were quite charred, and it gave them a really good texture, quite a crispy texture, and they were lovely, and they just put a big plate of those in the middle of the table. and that was absolutely delicious. And I don't know how they did it. Might have sort of just roasted them and slow cooked them for a bit, because as you got through the flesh of the meat, which was quite crispy, it was then quite soft underneath. So it tasted delicious.
So now you've got a full belly and you kind of know where you're going. What happened next?
Well, that was the sort of second night. We had a bit more of a chilled one, and we had a plan. Jan had then very kindly offered. He said, "Do you want to come with me early in the morning and go for wild boar under the moonlight?" Because it was a full moon that night. Now Dimitri had done this many times before, so he opted for a lie in. Me being keen as mustard, just went, yeah, let's do it. Didn't realize, this was sort of 11 o'clock at night. He'd invited me, and he then said, "Well, I'll pick you up at 3 in the morning." So I was like, right, let's go to bed now then. And he picked me up at 3 in the morning, and we went to look for some wild boar, our area of ground that he had about half an hour away. We didn't see very much at all, and we couldn't get a shot. But it was again just something new that I hadn't done before. It was quite scary, and I am quite a softie really, and being in the dark isn't my favourite. But it was nice to just sort of go out, stalk out into the field, find the high seat, and wait that out for a little while, just on the hope of seeing a boar. Didn't happen, and I was able to come back, and it was just another something to tick off the list whilst you were there for a few days. And we got back about 6 o'clock, and thought I'd have a couple of hours sleep and catch up and revisit the day later on. And it was about the third day that I went to a new area, which they've now actually named it Nathan's High Seat, which I love, and everybody knows it now as Nathan's High Seat. We got onto this field. We dropped Dimitri off at his area where he was going, and Jan and I went to this new area that I hadn't been to before. A huge open field, and then the high seat was just tucked into the side. So we went and waited there, and it was a lovely evening. Actually, it was just we got there about, I can't remember, just an hour or two before last light, and it was quite a warm high seat because it was all soundproofed and things like that, and it was more boxy and more enclosed, which was quite nice. And at this time, we'd become much more easy to chat with one another, and we were a lot more comfortable and familiar with each other, particularly after drinking copious amounts of schnapps over the 2 or 3 days, and beer and whiskey and gin. Um, but at this point, we're sat there, we're waiting around, and this fox appears in the distance. Now, this is the sort of the main part of my first trip. Bearing in mind we're looking for the right ram and things like that, and we hadn't really seen it. And this fox appears to the left of me, about 100 yards away. We could see that he had a slightly mangy tail. So I was told, right, okay, we're gonna take him out, because obviously it's an ethical shot really, and you don't want that around. And at this point, we've been waiting in this high seat now for a good hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours. I go and I lift the rifle up, and I'm looking, and I'm going, there's something not right here. And I realise we've been sat there for 2 hours with no magazine at all.
Oh no.
So we had no ammunition, no magazine, nothing. And we've been sat there, and neither of us had noticed. At this point, you just burst out laughing, and you go, "Oh, you know what? Shit happens," laughing our heads off. Come on, let's go back, and let's go and get something to eat. And we're being quite loud, and we're laughing, and it's just one of those things that you couldn't write. It happens. I've had to admit this because it makes for a good story. Most people I know wouldn't admit that they've been so foolish and gone to the point where they've been sat there and not noticed. And I'm saying, I'm going to hold this down to us just enjoying the environment and enjoying being there. That's what that's what did it. So we're walking across this field. I say to Yen, you know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to see Mouflon. Sure as anything. He turns to me after just having one quick glass, and he goes, "Nathan, I see Mouflons." That is the line I will never ever forget. And I'm looking, and I can see across the road, heading towards the field that we were just in, was a group of about 20, 25 Mouflon.
Oh no.
So he looks at me and he goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" So at this point, we've got no ammunition. We're thinking, can we get in touch with anyone to bring us some? And he goes, we've left the magazine on the kitchen table. That's what's happened, So I said, well, why not? Let's just go for it. So at this point, we're we jump in this little Soviet Union car and we're racing back to his house, which is about 10 minutes away, 5, 10 minutes away. The Mouflon are perfectly aware that we're there, but they're so familiar, used to cars because obviously, driving around and seeing them all the time, they're not really bothered. So we're racing across down this country road, bit of off-roading onto his fields that he's got. And at this point, the light is dwindling fast. We reckon we've got 25 minutes before last light, if that. So we're racing back to his. He pulls up, dives out of the car, runs through, grabs the magazine. I've got everything ready, and we're racing back, and we're just looking, to see if we can see them. And it's literally we've been now probably 10 minutes. Those little cars can be quite nippy. We pull up, and at this point, the group had crossed the road into the field now where we were, and we can see them just going into the back of the wood. So we're running up, and I'm at this point I'm in the field, loaded the magazine in, and got into position, and I just about get lined up on the particular ram that he picks out for me, and he just goes over and out of shot, and I couldn't take a safe shot, so I was like, shit, we've missed this one. He goes, right, let's go to the high seat. So we're with a little bit of pace, but trying to make not to make too much noise on this sort of snowy crop field, which is near impossible. We're trying to scuttle our way to the high seat that we've just been sat in. And again, bearing in mind we've got 10 minutes of light left at this, and we're up in the high seat, and we're waiting, and we're thinking, and I'm literally clock watching, because at this point I'm not going to be able to see anything. We've got good optics on, but there's a limit to everything. And get up in the high seat, and we're waiting, and it literally feels like an eternity, as these things do. And your heart is literally pumping in your chest. You can hear it, and that adrenaline is kicking in, because you don't know what's going to happen. It felt like you're sort of clock watching, and there's no exaggeration with this at all. We were literally on the edge of darkness, and we had good optics. We're waiting, and all of a sudden, the group that we'd seen in the wood, and the bottom half of this same wood, had come around. Because what it turns out is that they couldn't actually go anywhere else. They had to come back on themselves and come out the top of the wood where we were, literally out near the high seat. And Jan is saying to me, right, they're there. Let's just give them a chance to wait and see what happens. And we're waiting, because they're on the wood, and we couldn't see anything anyway, we couldn't make anything out. And all of a sudden, for some bizarre reason, they just all bolted straight out of the wood, and I'm thinking, we've lost this now. They've gone. They're absolutely gone. And even Jan's sort of reaction and sigh of, oh, shit, they've gone, was sort of quite telling. And they ran for about 100 meters, and then all of a sudden they just stopped and started grazing. And it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Now, whether or not that is some sort of defense that they do, or whether that was just they were spooked, and I couldn't tell you. But it was heart sinking, because you think, oh, the chance is gone, and we're sort of coming to the end now of the trip. And whilst you don't mind if you don't get something, it's always the opportunity has now presented itself. Let's see if we can make the most of it. So at this point, I'm having to take the rifle out of the front sort of portion of the high seat, and into the side. And I was kind of glad that we got to stalk into them a little bit, because I didn't want to just be sat in a high seat, because for me that was, I wanted to sort of experience it. So this sort of whole thing had sort of come to rounded off quite nicely. We'd been in high seats, we'd then stalked into a group, we'd raced back, because we'd we'd royally fucked up, but it's funny. And now we're in a position where we've managed to remedy the situation, and I'm now bringing the rifle out, and I'm looking at the side of this high seat, and I'm waiting for Jan to identify for me which one he wants me to take. Now I'm looking down the scope, and I'm seeing a number of animals, and I'm seeing a number of rams, but I'm not experienced to tell which one's which. or which one he wants taking as part of this management plan. Because again, with all these trips, the management plan is so strict, so well managed, and so well run. It's important to take the right one. All of a sudden, he says, "Right, there's an animal on the far left." Again, I'm sort of ad-libbing this because obviously the English is and my German, as I say, is sporadic at best. There was a ram on the end of the group, but he was flanked by two ewes, so I couldn't take a safe shot. And till they moved or he moved, I couldn't do anything. So he says, "This is the one that I want you to take." Going back to before we'd even gone out, you say about how you asking about zeroing and preparing. The one thing we did do is we had Dimitri and I had quite a long and lengthy discussion on the drive in as to how best to shoot these animals. Now, some people have said that shoot with typically the engine room, which is just behind the front leg, which is what I've always been told. But I was also told you could shoot through the front shoulder, and in a term which the only way I can describe it is to basically shoot the wheels off as a means to stop the animal from running. Now that's the instruction that I was given. We didn't want the animal running on, particularly as it was getting so late. And understandably, I was totally nervous about this and wanting to do the right thing. Anyway, as I'm waiting, the ram steps forward and Jan goes, "Are you ready? Take the shot when you can." And as soon as he said I can, I pulled the trigger exactly how I was told, and he just dropped on the spot. For me to say, it was a perfect shot. And Jan's reaction sort of told me that classic, well done, excitement, reserved excitement, let's just say. So I was really happy, and we just let everything settle down. He wasn't going anywhere. It was the shot placement worked out perfect. He was done. And at this point, we were walking up to him, and it was dark. Now, we'd taken the shot just in the nick of time, literally in the nick of time. And we go up to the ram, and he was a beaut, an absolute beaut. And I'm not saying that simply because he has a huge, set of horns on him, but he does. He was just a magnificent looking animal, and one that has clearly been through the wars. If you could hear his story, I'm sure it would be fascinating. I think he's around 8 or 9 years old, which is incredible.
How old do they live to?
I think they can go to a really good age is about 8 or 9, but that's not a common thing. He was just absolutely beautiful. He was battered, he was scarred, from fighting. He was past his prime, but still, this magnificent looking animal. He was big, thick set animal, and it was just incredible. He has the most, and I'm not interested in trophies, but it is nice to always admire something that has come from quality management. And his horns are just so symmetrical, but you could see where they come right the way round. He's nibbled the ends of the horns off as they're getting closer and closer to his eyes. Incredible, really. Just to protect his eyes. And you can see how they're all worn at the end, and they're all smashed in at the top, where he's been fighting. And his face is all scarred, and he's missing hair on his face, just to show that old age. Even Jan was saying to me that he's a magnificent example. So we prepared it, we got him ready, and we took him back to the car. And as we're doing that, Jan just goes ahead to bring the car a little bit closer. And the flock, I think it would be the correct term, had come back round in the dark, and I just caught the sort of the last of the sunlight, and I've got the photograph somewhere. As the flock had come round, noticed Jan and jumped, and I caught the photo because I was taking a photograph of Jan with the very very last of the sunset in the background, and they've jumped, and I've got the flock jumping, and it looks like they're jumping over him. It's
Oh,
one of those fluke photos.
wow.
Um, so that was just this point. I'm excited, what we've set out to achieve in this sort of really tricky, logistical nightmare of a hunt as all paid dividend. And to be honest, it was just fantastic. So we get back to the house, we prepare the ram and ready for the larder, because obviously he's going to be eaten. He goes into the food chain. They've caped him out for me, and because I've had there's no way I could not have the shoulder mount done of him, but the meat has gone into the food chain, which is important. And that night we got back and we had a big celebration. Jan's family again invited us over. The friends, the syndicate came and joined us with their families. And the respect that is given, it's very, very traditional in Germany for the trumpets. They gave the trumpets and the hunting horns at the end of the day as that sort of thanks to the animal. And we then proceeded to drink more schnapps. But it was just that sort of culmination of everything from a fantastic hunt, a brilliant story behind will we, won't we get there in the end, particularly having left the magazine, which is hilarious, right the way through to, the meal at the end. That was a tremendous night. We had an easy day. I think basically we had one more day. We were leaving sort of, the plan was to go and hunt for that, that have the day to ourselves, relax, get packed, hunt in the evening, come back, have an hour's sleep, and then drive through the night to get back to Cologne Airport for me on for the 23rd, basically. So, and it didn't go to plan. So I went back on the fourth day to Nathan's high seat again, and he said you can go on your own and see if you can get that fox. And I'm sat there waiting, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this kid just appears. And I'm bearing in mind I'm in a field now in the middle of nowhere, and this kid arrives on a little push bike. And I'm thinking, am I seeing things? It was like something like what's that film, Children of the Corn or something like that. And I'm freaking out, thinking, where's this random child appeared from? He's got the binoculars. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, what's he doing? And then he vanishes. And then he comes back about 5 minutes later. I'm thinking, where on earth has this kid come from? And I say kid, he must have been 8.
Oh my goodness.
It was really weird, really, really weird. And he starts like ringing the bell on his bike, and I'm thinking, is he trying to get my attention or whatnot? And now I'm not going to approach this person because I don't know what's going on, and I'm quite a way away. I've just got the binos out, and he's ringing the bell and shouting and laughing, and it was freaking me out. Something rotten. This, what's this laughing child doing in this field? And then he goes, and then about 2 minutes later. I hear like gunshots in the distance, and I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? 2 minutes later, after I hear these gunshots. Dimitri texts me, just shot 2 wild boar. So I'm like, right, okay, happy days, amazing, forget everything. Come down off the high seat, and I'm thinking, right, they both meet me in the, with the car and pick me up, and I say, well done on your boar. Asked the story, what happened, and Dimitri then tells me, he says, the most bizarre thing happened. He said, I'm facing this field. He said, and all of a sudden, I hear somebody, a little way behind me, ringing a bell on a bike. He said, and I turn around. He said, and all of a sudden, after this noise, so what it was this kid had obviously been cycling past, made a load of noise, disturbed a group of wild boar. They ran out away from the kid, ran straight into Dimitri's field where he is, and he shot 2 running wild boar.
Oh my goodness.
The kid, the strange child from the corn, as we'll refer to him now, effectively acted as a beater for Dimitri. So he got 2 running wild boar.
That's amazing. And he's not, this child isn't local, doesn't, do it for extra money or anything, just is almost like a spirit child that appears when you.
No idea. We have no idea who he is. I think what we're going to say is he must be like a child that appears for lowly hunters who are in need of some entertainment whilst up in a high seat. It was just weird, but
Oh my goodness.
that was the sort of cherry on top of the cake. And we'd gone back to the cabin. We've now had a fantastic trip. We've eaten lots of food. We've drank a lot. Proper, really, really good memory. One for the books. We said, well, we'll have an hour's sleep, and we're exhausted at this point, absolutely exhausted. And we said, right, well, we've got a 4-hour journey from where we are to the airport. We thought we'll pack everything up, and then we'll get on the road for about 11 o'clock because I needed to be at the airport for 5. Well, neither of our alarms worked, and we woke up at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Oh no.
I have never, and bearing in mind at this point, this is now the morning of the 23rd of December, and it's the last flight out of Cologne Airport where I was until after Christmas. And I had we had a 4-hour drive ahead of us. It was petrifying. That was the most horrible, horrible journey ever,
Oh
as
my
we
goodness.
raced to the airport, and £500 worth of fines later, and 4 hours later, Dimitri got me to the airport. Well, the fines came after it, you realised.
Oh
Uh,
my goodness.
it was carnage, but what a way to end a hunt.
Oh my goodness. It sounds like an amazing experience and just full of energy and excitement. Has your Mouflon come back to you now? Has
He's
he?
been done. He's been done. I'm picking him up next week. Taxidermist had a big, waiting list as these things do, and can't wait to pick him up, to be honest, because that's a memory for life. And I mean, he does. I've seen. They've sent me a photograph of him already, and he does look absolutely spectacular. And I think that it's the right thing to do. He's none of him has been wasted. He's been eaten. He's made plenty of meals, and he's rightly been recognised as this magnificent thing that he is. So he will forever be a part of my hunting life. So it's fantastic, and it was fantastic to share it with Dimitri. It's been fantastic to share it with Jan and Josie, his wife, who have become great friends. And we hunted again together in December with another very good friend of mine, Carson, who came and shot his very special mouflon, and that was a spectacular hunt as well. And special to share it with another friend. It's something now, it's become somewhat of a tradition, and Jan is now going to come to Greenland with us, and hunt for muskox. So it's something that's not just been a one way street. It's from that one initial trip. Lots of memories have come about. Friendships have been sort of secured and tightened, and it's why I do it, to be honest. And Angela Merkel got another outing. So it's she went. Let's say she went home, Merkel Helix, and again, I love using it for the simple reason that because of the imperative nature of that, if that animal did run, I've got a quick follow up shot because of the action on it. I just love it.
So where are we off to next time?
Well, it was originally going to be Greenland. Now, we'd planned the Greenland trip for quite some time, 10 months, but unfortunately, circumstances changed, and we had to postpone that to next year. So it's already booked in the diary, and arranged for 2024, which is something to look forward to. Just a shame that it has to be another sort of 12-month wait. But we're going to go to Majorca, and we're going to go looking at the Balearian Bok, slightly hotter than anywhere else I've been so far hunting.
Yeah, you're gonna have to strip down on those layers. And
I'm going to have to threaten people with my legs, my very pale legs.
well, I guess as it's a podcast, people don't need to. We don't need to have a warning at the start for your scary legs. So, what did you say you were after? A Balerian?
A Balearian Bok. Now they're only found. They're a sort of again a goat and sheep type animal, and they're only found in Majorca.
That sounds very exciting. Why are they only found in Mallorca?
It should just they're just native to the island. They're not found anywhere else. They're a beautiful looking animal, but very distinct black and brick. The only way I can describe it is like a brick color, very dark brick, sort of like a rusty color, and then quite a dark chest. Fantastic animals, but there's a real interesting conservation story with that.
Fantastic. Well, we'll pick that up next time, and we can also discuss. Well, they obviously can't swim if they've never left the island or gone anywhere else. So we'll pick up on that in the next podcast. So thank you so much, Nathan, for joining me for this episode of Intrepid Hunter. And for listeners, you can catch up on the previous episodes where Nathan, you've been to Kazakhstan, you have been to Sweden, I
Went
want
to
to say.
Kyrgyzstan, then we were in Norway, then
Norway.
Jersey,
Yeah,
and obviously now Majorca, and then it will be, well, it should have been Greenland, but that's next year. But we've got plenty more places to go to yet.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we will catch up with you soon. And for any listeners who want to find out more about the clothing that Nathan uses for these extreme weather hunts, then you can head over to his Instagram account, which is at hotshotlittle. And for information relating to the Merkel Helix or Leupold Optics, or any other kit that's mentioned in this podcast, you can also head over to vikingshoot.com and reach out to the team there for more information. So we will catch up next time, Nathan.
Thanks very much, Meredith. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye.